right, so this is looking at the brains of different animals. Shh, you ready? This is looking at the brains of different animals. So here's the human. So you can see our brain with the cerebellum, the chimpanzee. They also have it in the brainstem. The rhesus monkey. A rhesus monkey is about this big. So it's a little monkey, right? And then the rats. So you see they don't have as much of a cerebrum, that's the lobes, as we do. But they still have the brainstem. A crocodile still has the brainstem. What does the brainstem do? Yeah, how does it keep you alive? It does what? Survival functions like what? Breathing and heart rate, right? So it's not surprising that a crocodile would have that. So the crocodile can keep breathing. A frog, the same thing. A fish, the same thing. But we're more advanced than a fish or than a crocodile in higher order thinking stuff, which is why we have more material up here. So this stuff down here, this part of the brain, that's the more basic part of the brain. Okay, here's a slide. I'll do the next one. Yeah. This shows a sperm whale. So this is a sperm whale, and this is a human. So you get the idea of the size comparisons. The human down here is scuba diving. A human brain weighs about 3 pounds, and a sperm whale's brain weighs about 17 pounds, which seems like a lot. Does that mean a sperm whale is smarter than us? No. I mean, it's better at holding its breath, and it can, like, navigate stuff in the water, but it doesn't make it necessarily smarter than us just because he has a larger brain. And 17 pounds seems like a lot, but look at the comparison. Look how big, again, the human is compared to the sperm whale. And then go to the next slide. And then, but that's the brain difference, right? So 17 pounds seems like a lot, but when you actually see it, isn't it smaller than you thought it might have been, considering the size of the whale, right? So our brains are relatively advanced and big for our body size. They're not so big that like we walk around like this because we can't hold our brains up, but our brain is relatively large. Okay. Next we have the thalamus. So the thalamus sits at the top of the brainstem, and it's our sensory switchboard. So write down sensory switchboard, and then I'm going to show you what a switchboard looks like. Next one, then we'll come back to this. This is an old school, you can see, an old school switchboard. So back in the day, if you made a phone call, they would pull out the call from the person and then hook you into the call where you needed to go. So that's a switchboard. The thalamus is like that in that it takes information from all of your senses and then directs it where it needs to go. So right now you're listening to me, so that information is being processed through your thalamus and then sent to your temporal lobe. So the thalamus processes all of the information from your senses except for your sense of smell. So all your other sensations go through the thalamus. So we can go back to that slide so we can see it. Yeah. So it directs those messages and then it kind of sends them where they need to go. Okay, so that's the job of the thalamus. It's at the top of the brainstem. So here's your brainstem, cerebellum. Again, it's sliced in half here, so it kind of looks like a cauliflower. And then up here at the top, you have your thalamus, and then here's our corpus callosum around it. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so now you're on the back of your paper. So you have the limbic system. Okay, the limbic system. So in the box at the top, you're going to write the limbic system. And then we're going to talk about the 3 parts of the limbic system. So it's a neural system that's located below the hemisphere. So here it is right here. It's above the brainstem, but below the hemispheres, below the lobes of the brain. And it's associated with emotions and drives. There's 3 parts of it. You don't have to write there's 3 parts of it because you're going to write down those 3 parts. but that's an important idea to know. The three parts are the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus. Those are the three parts of the limbic system. So just like how the brainstem had the medulla and the pons and the reticular formation, the limbic system has the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the hypothalamus. So those three parts. They all help with processing your emotions and your drives. By drives, we're referring to your hunger drive, your thirst drive, your sex drive. So, your amygdala is involved with experiencing emotion. It's this small structure, and you have it on both hemispheres of your brain, so both sides of your brain, and it helps you experience emotions. Teenagers use this part of their brain to make decisions. As you get older, you will transition into using your frontal lobe more. So sometimes teenagers, when they make decisions and you say, well, why did you do that? And they cry and they say, I don't know why I did that. It's because they didn't think it out because they used their amygdala instead of using their frontal lobe. Now, you don't get to go home and say to your parents, I did it because I was using my amygdala. It doesn't get to be an excuse for you to get out of bad decisions that you might have made. But nobody in this class makes bad decisions. We make good decisions. Right? The other thing about the amygdala. So there's different parts of it. So for example, if you stimulate one part of it, it will make a rat cower in fear in the corner of a cage. If you stimulate a different part of it, it will make the rat attack. There is a woman who does not have an amygdala, and she cannot experience fear. It's not that she's not afraid of things. She cannot experience the emotion of fear. So she's had a really tough life. She was beat by her husband, and she's been held up at knife points, but she cannot experience fear, being afraid, what that's like. So they'll like have her watch a scary movie, or they'll bring like a snake in front of her and be like, oh, what do you think now? And she's not afraid of any of it, ever. She can experience pain, but she can't experience fear. What evolutionary adaptation does fear have? Like, why do we experience fear? How does it protect us?
Keeps us from danger.
Keeps us from danger, right? From doing things that would be life-threatening. She doesn't have that because her amygdala has been destroyed. I think it was the result of genetics. Like, she was born without one, I think. They protect her privacy a lot. They don't, like, she's not on talk shows or anything like that, because you can imagine if she were, people would come up to her all the time and want to test out if she's afraid of something. So within psychology, they just know her by the initials SM. Okay. All right, your hippocampi. Your hippocampi are on both sides. That's the plural version of it. Hippocampus is if you're talking about one hippocampus. It is thought to be the center of emotion and memory. So if your hippocampus has been damaged, you will have trouble making new memories, and you could also have amnesia from events that have happened before. When we get to our unit on memory, we'll talk about a guy named HM. They removed his hippocampi because he was having severe seizures, kind of like the guy Joe that we saw in the video yesterday where they severed his corpus callosum. So for HM, they removed his hippocampi, and the result was he lost his memory all the way back to when he was 16, and he could not form any new memories. So now what we know about the hippocampus is it's necessary for memory formation. Okay, the last part of the limbic system is the hypothalamus. This does a lot of things. Your hypothalamus does a lot of things. It controls your autonomic nervous system. Remember, your autonomic nervous system is your fight or flight, and then rest and digest. So it helps control your fight or flight response. So the hypothalamus directs that behavior. It also controls the pituitary gland. Your pituitary gland is your master gland of the endocrine system. So it helps control the endocrine system. And then lastly, it controls your drives. So your hunger drive, your drive to eat, your thirst drive, your drive to drink, your sex drive, your drive to have sex, and then it also controls your body temperature. So all of that is done by the hypothalamus. So it's a pretty important brain part. That's a lot of information for one part. Okay, now, you do not have to write all of this, but you do need to know that there's a difference between the lateral hypothalamus and the ventromedial hypothalamus. The AP test loves to ask about this. I don't know why. This pops up on the AP test all the time. So, your lateral hypothalamus is your hunger center. Okay? So, if stimulated, it causes you to feel hungry. If it's destroyed, you will not feel hunger. On the other side is your ventromedial hypothalamus, which is your satiety center. If it's stimulated, it makes you feel full. If it's destroyed, you will never feel full and just keep eating. So, you know when you're eating and you start to feel full, that's your ventromedial hypothalamus kicking in. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes after you're full to start feeling full, which is why sometimes when people just keep eating after they already feel full, and then when they're done, they're like, ugh, I don't feel good, I feel too full. It's because the message took that long to reach the brain. But your ventromedial hypothalamus will indicate to you that you are done eating. Okay, so you have the lateral hypothalamus and the ventromedial hypothalamus. They've done experiments. Yeah, so they've done experiments where they destroyed the ventromedial hypothalamus on rats, so the rats just never stopped eating. So there's a picture of one, and then we can see the next one. Yeah. So this was the control group, and then this is the experimental group that they destroyed his ventromedial hypothalamus. Yeah, it's a big rat, right? Okay, your last thing you need to know is your cerebral cortex. Your cerebral cortex is the outer layer of your cerebrum, which is your lobes. Think of it like the bark on a tree. So it's the outer layer, and it controls all of your information processing. And then also, it's your control center. So your cerebral cortex has all the cortices that we already talked about. So your visual cortex, your auditory cortex, your somatosensory cortex, your motor cortex, your prefrontal cortex. All of that is part of your cerebral cortex. And in terms of evolution, this is one of the most recent parts to develop. This is the part of the brain that allows us to have higher order thinking. It allows us to think logically and to be able to talk about things that aren't here. Okay, if you look at the next slide, here's a picture of all of the different cortexes. So you can see, for example, the gustatory or gustatory cortex. This allows you to have taste, to process the different tastes in your mouth. You can see back over here you have your auditory cortex, your visual cortex, your somatosensory cortex. Okay?